Welcome to Seek Reality. I'm Roberta Grimes, and I'm so happy you're with us today. Several years ago, today's guest, who then lived locally to us, invited me to go to lunch with him. And he was then known primarily as a meditation expert. And if there's anything I'm really bad at, it's meditation. But he would never take that for an answer. He was determined to help me learn. He insisted to me that anybody can learn to meditate, which I'm sure he's right. Because he's a true expert. I'm sure he's right. Sadly, though, I think I'm the sole exception. My longer history with meditation is that back in the 70s, my husband and I went to California. We spent a week studying transcendental meditation with the Beatles guru, the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi himself and his team. And it turned out my husband was a natural at meditation. Seriously, he went on to meditate every single day of his life for the next 40 years. But sadly, I couldn't even do it with the Maharishi himself. I flunked out there as well. But I became a good friend, frankly, and I respect our wonderful guest today is a truly, truly great guy, and he is a meditation star. Kelvin Chin is an author. He's a meditation teacher and a life after life expert. His first book is called Overcoming the Fear of Death Through Each of the Four Main Belief Systems, and it's a bestseller. His second book is called Marcus Aurelius Updated 21st Century Meditations on Living Life, and it's a collection of 67 essays ranging from emotions, life principles, meditation, and the spiritual. And his third book is After the Afterlife. That's the one we're going to talk about today, Memories of My Past Lives. And it describes his past life memories, bits of memories really, that reach back 6,000 years and have resurfaced for him over the past 45 years, and what they taught him about himself and about how our minds continue from lifetime to lifetime. I mean, when people have past life memories, they don't go back and they remember, day by day. They just have bits of memories that come up and often kind of in amazing ways. Kelvin Chin is executive director and founder of the Turning Within Meditation and Overcoming the Fear of Death Foundations, and he's an internationally recognized meditation teacher. He's been featured in big places, in Business Insider, Newsweek, and Kaiser Health News. He's taught meditation at West Point and in the U.S. Army, including in the DMZ in Korea, for heaven's sake. Kelvin has been meditating for 52 years, and he has taught meditation to thousands of people in over 60 countries, but he had to subtract one because he tried to teach me, and I just couldn't do it. He's laughing now. He's a graduate of Dartmouth, Yale, and Boston College School of Law. Kelvin, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here after all this time.
Yeah, it's great to see you again. It's been a few years. Yeah.
I really want to talk about this. I enjoyed your book. I got to read part of it, but because of my injury, I just can't read a book right now. I have one hand, and one hand isn't good enough for reading a book. Mm. But what I read about it, really, it was fascinating because I know why this would be possible. One of the things that meditation does is to give people good control of their minds. And since you're so good at meditation, I can really imagine that the way the veil is thinning now, someone who's good at meditating, as you're good at meditating, would be able to actually access other lives and fragments of lives pretty easily, I would think. But it started with you kind of spontaneously. Why don't you tell us that story? How did this begin for you?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Yeah, I think meditation has definitely accelerated my, as you say, my opening up. But it was really spontaneous. You know my history, so I'll just tell the viewers who don't know about it. Yeah. I learned to meditate when I was a teenager, and the main reason I did it was because I was stressed out. I was highly anxious. I was you were at Smith, I was up at Dartmouth College. It was very high pressure, as you know, and I was really stressed out. That's why I learned. I was not into spiritual stuff. If you'd asked me about spirituality, or if you were into, if you had this podcast back then, I go, okay, what is she talking about? Ghosts? I don't know. I mean, I didn't know what spirituality was, you know? It's like, I thought it was like, well, I kind of went to church for a while and then I stopped going in high school. You know, that's what I thought it was. So I was just learning meditation purely for stress management reasons. That's it. And it helped me. It turned my life around. As you said, I learned TM. Back then, I studied personally with Maharishi in 1971 and 1973. And as you know, I became an international leader in his organization for about 10 years. And then they went off in a different direction. And I said, I'm going to stay focused on the meditation. And I've since removed all the cultural stuff and made it easier. But what happened spontaneously, as you say, in the mid-70s for me is the first thing I had was a dream that I just thought was a dream. I didn't think it was anything other than a bad dream. And I'd had bad dreams before, you know, of course, you know, just had nightmares, bad dreams. This one was very emotionally distressing. It wasn't a fear. You know, sometimes we have dreams where, you know, some dog is chasing us or something. It's fear related. This one was not that. This one was emotionally distressing, like sadness. And that was it. And so I just parked it, you know, and I didn't think much of it. Because remember, I didn't believe in anything past life related, or I didn't even believe in an afterlife. I was science oriented. I didn't believe in a heaven or whatever. So then I was about 6 or 8 months later, I was on one of these advanced TM meditation retreats in Switzerland. And there's like 75 of us in the hotel, and we're doing group meditations and we're doing individual meditations up in our rooms and so forth all day, every day for 2 months. And during, yeah, I know. And during the one of the group meditations, I had this energy rush and everybody was getting it. We were doing in addition to the TM technique that you and your husband originally learned, we were doing some very easy energetic movements. Your audience would probably think of it as energy movement or Kundalini kind of exercises. And during one of those in the group meditations, I started getting all these energy rushes. And so then after lunch one day, we would go for walks, and I was talking to my friend George Hammond, and I started telling him, I said, I had this dream, George, like about 6 or 8 months ago. It was really upsetting. I think that's all I told him. And then he filled in the rest of the dream. And then I said, well, how'd you know that? And he told me what I was wearing, and I had sandals on and a brown tunic and this and that. And I've been crying all night. And I said, how'd you know that? And he goes, because I found you in the desert on the side of the road. And I'm like, what? So that's how that opened up for me initially. And then the floodgates started opening up, because I didn't believe, as I said, in past lives, and I thought maybe he was just reading my mind at the time or whatever. But when I started relaxing into what he told me, that's when it opened up. Yeah, pretty spontaneous. Wow. Yeah, for someone who didn't believe in past lives or the afterlife or heaven or anything.
Wow. So where did you go from there? Did you?
So then, so that was the end of 1977. That was November to December. I know exactly the dates because that's when the course was. November to December 1977. In early 1978, I started having memories of being a slave on a ship. Well, I didn't know it was a ship at first. So here's a good example of, you and I talked before we started doing the interview about getting into process. So this is a good example of process, right? So the first time I have this experience, it wasn't a dream. It was a vision I had, I think, during my rest period after I meditated or something like that. I was in a relaxed state, whatever it was. I wasn't dreaming. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't wide awake, and I wasn't meditating. So I was in kind of this in-between twilight state. You know, people sometimes we call it a twilight state.
Oh, sure.
And so I'm there and I see myself on a piece of wreckage like the size of a door, maybe a little bit bigger than a door, piece of wood floating on, and I look around and I can't see any land. So I think I'm on the ocean. So that's my first thought, is I think I'm on a piece of wreckage in the ocean. And then what I see my body, it's like I'm above my body looking down at this body that I knew was mine. And I have really, really dark black skin. Like, you know, the phrase that people say, blue black, it's so dark, it's like has a blue. That was my skin color. And I'm lying there on my stomach. I can see my back. I can't see my face. I'm just lying there alone in the middle of what I think is the ocean. That's my first experience. And of course, I'm feeling very distressed.
I would think so.
And then later, but process-wise was interesting. Later, I start tasting things. So I have a sensory experience. So that when I talk to people about past lives, I say, look for emotional. So emotional, I'm really distressed. And does it feel real? Yeah, it felt real. But do you start to have other sensory things? So it's not always this way, but these are like checklist stuff to look at to see if. And so I started tasting the salt, and it was really salty water. So I thought I was confirming that I was in the ocean somewhere, whatever. And then then I start seeing ships, and I start seeing ships in battles, and they're ramming each other. So now I know this is old. Okay. Yeah. This is not the 1700s. It's not the 1800s. Certainly not anything in the 1900s or the 20th century. This is ancient. Okay. We're ramming the ships are ramming each other. And then I see myself chained down. I'm rowing. So I know I'm a slave, right? I'm chained down. I'm rowing in one of these ships. And I think the next kind of iteration in the process was I started seeing this thing come down from one of the ships onto another ship. And it was like a ramp coming down from one ship to the other. And then the soldiers would run across, or the sailors or whatever, the soldiers, they would run across, and then it was this big battle, right? And then sometimes they would throw tar on and fire, and then the ship would blow up. And so that's what I think happened to my But the interesting data point from a processing standpoint, I call this connecting the dots, following the breadcrumbs and connecting the dots is what I call this. And so the jigsaw puzzle pieces. So when the thing that came down had a hook on it, it had a metal hook on it, it looked like a beak, like it was probably made of bronze or something, some metal thing come down. Oh. And it would hook on, and then the soldiers would run across. So I went and I looked this up. This is what I tell my students sometimes. I said, so follow the breadcrumbs. Look at the jigsaw puzzle pieces. Do they go together or not? And now we got the internet. So I looked it up. And there's this thing called a corvus. It's called a corvus. It's actually, I think it means raven or something like that in Latin, like the beak of a raven. Like corvus, it comes down. And who did it? Who used those? The Roman Navy. And when did they use it? They only used it, I can't remember exactly. I think I put it in my book, but I looked it up. They used it for only like a 50 to 75 year period in Roman naval history. Oh. Why? Because the Carthaginians ruled the Mediterranean and had better maneuverability. They had better technology of their ships than the Romans. The Romans are way behind, but the Romans invented this ramp with a corvus on the end to hook on, and to equal the playing field, because now the two ships become like they're fighting on land. They're not having to maneuver, right? And so that that allowed them to catch up, the Romans to catch up with their maneuverability, their technology of their ships. Then they got rid of the corvus. They didn't need that anymore. So that's how I connected the dots to realize I was a Carthaginian slave on a Carthaginian ship, because I saw those coming down onto our ships.
Oh, crazy. My goodness.
Right.
So was this overnight?
This is over years.
For years. Oh my goodness, how fascinating.
This is like 1978 to, I don't know. So here's the other thing I tell my students, that I'll tell your audience. Take notes, write things down. I didn't think I was going to ever talk about this stuff. I talked about this stuff with 2 or 3, 5 friends. That was it. I didn't think I was going to start. I just started talking about this stuff in the last several years. So to help my students overcome the fear of death, as you said.
Right. Yeah.
But I didn't know I was going to be doing that when I was 20-something years old. So this went on. This one series that I just gave you all the snippets of happened probably over 10 years.
Oh, fascinating. And it probably you had opened this door because you were doing so much meditating. You were getting really deep into your psychological kind of who you were. I didn't even know you could open that door.
We'll call it baggage.
I guess.
I was unloading lots of baggage.
Yes, you were.
Unloading lots of baggage. Yeah.
Was this mixed in with other kinds of memories of other times? It's like sometimes you would have this, you would access this having been this slave, and then other times you would access this a different memory of a different life.
Yeah, I call that so I have this analogy. I said it's like each lifetime is like 100 million piece jigsaw puzzle. I mean, I just pick a big number. The 100 million is not, I mean, you could say 100 billion, whatever. It's just a
big number.
Big number. And you start getting pieces, and oh, look, 3 pieces go together. They fit together over here. Oh, look, 10 pieces fit together over here. Oh, wow, look, you got 20 pieces fit together over here. And then they may be the same puzzle. But then what I started happening was that I started getting different pieces from different puzzles around.
Oh, my goodness.
So in 1978, when this started happening after the 1977 experience, 1978 to 79, I started, I'll just give you a list. I had the Carthaginian slave one. I had one where I was a World War II fighter pilot. This is all within about 6 months. Within about 6 months, this all just popped in, like all these different puzzles, right? I knew I was a king of Prussia, a king. I didn't know where Prussia was. I didn't think I was going to talk about it. I didn't even look it up then. I just thought, oh, king of Prussia, big deal. And then the king of Prussia thing, I didn't have another, I call data point or another jigsaw puzzle piece in that one, other than the knowingness of a king of Prussia for another 15 years until something else popped in on that. And then I didn't know which one until recently, around 2014. I figured it out and I connected the dots. So that spans what, 40 years or something, or whatever it is. Or,
My goodness.
30 years, whatever. But another one that popped in 1978. So this was spring of
we're going back now a few years. Okay.
Yeah, I'm all over the place, but because you get these different puzzle pieces, right? So I lost track here, but maybe I got 4 or 5 going on at the same time, different puzzles going on at the same time. And it was this one popped in. This is an interesting one from a process standpoint, because I'll show you how the process, this one took from 1978 spring to 2010. Yeah. So this is what I'm going to tell you spans 1978 to 2010. So in 1978, I was, again, lying down resting after I meditated, and I was at some friend's house outside of Chicago, and their parents' living room floor. We had just meditated. There's 6 or 7 of us or whatever there. And I'm lying there resting, and you know how your mind's eye can open up, and you kind of like the TV screen goes on inside. You have a TV. It's like I'm watching stuff. It's like in a dream. For those people who don't know what I'm talking about, most people have had dreams where you can see stuff in your dream. So this was not a dream, because I'm just lying down half awake, or I'm awake, but relaxed after I'm meditating. Okay. But it's the same phenomenon. So now I see myself, I walk into a stone room, stone floor, stone wall, ceiling, everything, big, huge stone blocks. And I walk to the center of the room, and there's nobody in the room except myself. And the furniture is all pushed to the walls, except there's one piece of furniture in the middle of the room, and it's a big full-length mirror. So I walk up to the mirror, and it's the first and only time that I've ever seen my face in an experience before. And I walked up, I see them in the mirror, and I go up and I see myself, and I fill up the mirror, so I know I'm big. Take note of that data point. So I know I'm big, but I don't know how big yet, okay? I know I'm big. I fill up the mirror. I have long red hair. Take note of that. Red hair, red beard. I have a full-length chainmail on with a white tunic and a cross. So I knew as a crusader, and I get this energy rush. I get this knowingness that it's me. But what I had was process-wise, interestingly, because as I said, I have a science background. I didn't believe in past lives and stuff, right? This has just started happening to me 6 months before this experience. I'm like, no. And I had doubt. I had doubt. And then immediately after I have the doubt experience, this rush of energy goes from like my feet up through my body, shoots out my head with knowingness. So I see a vision. I see myself. I know it's me. So I have knowingness, doubt, knowingness, and with this energy just shoots through me like a fire hose with the knowingness. And so I relaxed because I'm like, oh, I relaxed and the floodgates opened up. Now, so from 1978 to 2010, I'll just list a bunch of stuff. So I won't, because I didn't take notes. So I didn't keep a journal. I don't know exactly when this happened. But over that period of time, various things happened. Like I started seeing myself in battles in the Crusades. And I was
always a man. You're always a man.
No, we're going to come back to the woman one in a sec. So I was always at the phalanx. I was always at the spearhead tip of the thousands of troops. That's one data point, right? Always there. And I have all these memories, and it's kind of gory, and it's I get smell of the battlefields. People should never want to go to war. I mean this seriously. It doesn't. Yeah, it's disgusting. Or the past, doesn't matter when. War is uglier than people can imagine. That's why you have so many PTSD soldiers coming back. It's just that PTSD has existed forever in survivors of these battles. Anyway, so I have all these memories of the smells and the tastes and all this stuff, and the sand of the desert in my teeth as I'm in the battles. And so that's one data point. Eating horses when we're starving is another data point. But I started remembering how big I remember just out of nowhere after 10 or 15 years, I started going, I'm 6'5", 230 pounds. Where did that come from? 6'5", 230 pounds. I knew how big I was out of, I don't know where. It's out of my memory now. I know where it is. But at the time I was like in the 1980s, I'm like, where does that come from? And then 2010, I'm meditating in a room with my daughter. We're meditating, and she told me, she filled in the blanks of this experience when I was writing my book 6 months ago, because I'd forgotten pieces of it because I was immersed in this experience. She said we meditated together, and then we were lying down resting, and I was on the floor resting, and she's lying down on the couch or something, and I'm on the floor lying down resting. And she said, Daddy, I looked down at you and you started yelling Saracens.
Oh.
And you were going like this with your fit. You had two hands on something, and you were, and then I asked you afterwards, and you didn't remember, and I told you what happened, and you said, oh, I was in battle. And so we didn't know what Saracens was. We looked it up. And so I've learned recently in 2010, that the word Saracens is the old term for Muslims. Muslims is a term since 1600s. Right. For 1,000 years before that, they were called Saracens. And so I was in the Third Crusades in the 1100s.
Of course.
And there was only one person who was 6'5" who had reddish hair, who was leading battles in the Third Crusades.
Look at that. You found out someone that you actually were. Wow. Look at you.
And get this. Here's another data point of that one, is that he was a musician and wrote music. I was a music. I've been a musician this lifetime in my youth. So I've had lifetimes where I was a musician and wrote music. Other times I was a musician and didn't write music, but I've always had this music personality trait, even though I'm a battlefield commander or a leader of this or a slave or whatever.
There are traits that carry over. Yeah.
It's a thread. Yeah.
Isn't that fascinating? That's so interesting. And so But what do you know what made this get started? What started it and started to draw it out of you? Do you know?
No, no, I just know that it started happening. I really don't. I just, I think, I'll answer it this way. I think that there's two things that help me open up more maybe than other people. And now I'm not the only one. There's lots of people who have past life memories, but I think there's two key factors. One is fear of death. I don't have a fear of death. I don't want to die, but I don't have a fear of how I'm going to die because I have memories of how I've died in horrific ways. And I know that I will survive that experience, the experience of death. So that aspect of fear, it doesn't exist in me. Okay. And the other is embarrassment. I mean, and I mean this seriously. I mean, I don't care what people think. I don't care if people think I'm crazy for telling these stories now. I mean, it's like whatever they think, they think. I don't have control over, as you know, we don't have control over what other people think of us. And so I really have embraced that, I think, more deeply this lifetime than in any of my previous lifetimes. And I think that's that's a key reason.
Yes. So are you teaching? Do people say, hey, that's cool, I want to learn how to do that? And are you teaching people how to recover past memories?
No, I don't teach people. I mean, people can go to past life regressionists. I don't do that. But I teach people how to meditate, as you've said already. And that can open people up. I can't promise that it will, but is it a key accelerator? I think so. To open ourselves up more to to the vastness of who we are. In other words, not just our little, what I call our mind, and everybody, we have an 8-inch little bucket part of ourselves. That's the focusing, the controlling, the directing part of our mind. The driving the car down the street part of our mind. But we have our vastness of our mind that people aren't open up to. That's what I teach people how to open up to. So is that going to increase the probability? Yes, of opening up to past lives. Yeah. So I'm a probability guy. So I try to teach stuff that will increase their likelihood as much as possible. They can go to somebody. There's some good past life regression people out there, and there's some, I don't do that. But yeah.
And how many lives? I mean, you say in your book that you've gone back to as 6,000 years with memories.
Yeah.
And how many lives have you figured out you've discovered fragments of?
Fragments of a couple of dozen, 24, 25 lifetimes. In fact, I just got another one since I wrote the book. I got another one, I don't know, in May or something like that. The book came out in April, so I think in May or something like that, I got another piece of another native indigenous person here in what we now call North America, but ancient, but older. So one I talk about in the book is from the 1800s, of being a Lakota leader and shaman. But the one I recently got visions of and memories of in May of this year was from about, I'm guessing, 6,000 or 8,000 years ago in Southwest, what we call Southwest. In fact, where Sam is, somewhere over near Arizona, New Mexico-ish area, something like that, what we call that area now.
Sam is my wonderful engineer. They were talking before we did this program.
Oh, yeah. People may not be able to see Sam, but
he's in Arizona.
Yeah, so, right.
Yeah. And do you find connections among these lives? Because I know you put them in order in the book. They didn't come to you in order at all, but
no.
Do you see growth from them, from one to another, and do you see connections?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Yeah, in the book, I had to organize it somehow, because I couldn't just do it the way I experience it, because it's been all over craziness, like just this and this and this and this puzzle and that piece. So I did put them in what we historically know as chronological order, starting 6,000 years ago to 1943. I think I died in my last lifetime. right before this one. So, but yes, the short answer is yes, absolutely. Connections and learnings and growth and self-development, learnings from looking within myself, because I've long been a person that's part of my personality, is to learn from my mistakes and learn from my good experience and bad experiences, both, and neutral experiences, all experiences, is to learn. And so, I have a strategic personality trait, an ability to be strategic and tactical on a playing field, a battlefield, or a business field. So I've chosen to exercise that in the business arena this lifetime instead of the battlefield. Right. So but I've been a political leader, et cetera. So, and that involves strategy and tactical, personality traits and skills and so forth. So how I've expressed these has been different in different lifetimes. That's the point. And even the music point that I mentioned, it's been expressed differently in different lifetimes. In one of my lifetimes in the 1700s, I'm known to have written, I think it was like 121 arias and stuff, and I was a flautist. I gave flute concerts, solo flute concerts in my palace when I was the King of Prussia and so forth. And I've known for my musical ability. In fact, the flute that I had obviously handmade, but back then in the 1700s, my original flute still exists in Germany. Yeah, it's still owned by one of the families there, has it. Yeah, and they actually, I saw this online, that they actually brought the flute out, because obviously it's being very, very carefully cared for. They brought it out, and it was played for the first time in like 200 something years at a Prussian festival. Yeah,
that's amazing. It's kind of gives you shivers in a way, doesn't it?
No, right? Yeah. But the interesting thing, here's one about that lifetime in Prussia. So as I said, in 2014, I figured out, kind of triangulated which king of Prussia. It was Frederick II. And but that particular king of Prussia was into what? To this point of what you were talking about, threads and so forth, and what have we learned and what carries forward from lifetime to lifetime. He was into Greek philosophy, and he modeled his life after. Well, before I say this, before that, in 1999, I had this knowingness that I was Marcus Aurelius. Now, out of the 25 lifetimes, 95% of these lifetimes are no-name people, just unknown people, right?
You would expect a lot of them to be, yeah.
Yeah, but there's like four of them, I think, or five of them, something like that, who are known characters. He's one of them. So when I was researching something about Marcus Aurelius, and if you read my purple book, that's why I called it Marcus Aurelius Updated, the 67 essays that I've written in this lifetime, a lot of those ideas, you look at those ideas and you compare them to Marcus Aurelius' ideas, and a lot of the concepts are similar, or I've expanded on them. So this answers your question about how have we grown over the thousands of years. So I've taken some of the seeds, and then I've expanded on some of those. You've looked through that lens. If you read my purple book, the Marcus Aurelius Updated book, through that lens now, and if any of your audience have studied any Marcus Aurelius' stuff, they'll see parallels. Anyway, when I was looking up some Marcus Aurelius stuff, I have this book here. It's like 1.5 inch thick biography. And in the back of this book, in one of the last chapters, is a chapter on people who revered Marcus Aurelius through history. And 1600 years after Marcus Aurelius died, there's this guy, and at this point, I don't know which king of Prussia I am, okay? And I read this, and it says, a king of Prussia, Frederick II, modeled his life after Marcus Aurelius. And I said, well, what? Wait a minute. Getting chills. And so I look up this guy, Frederick II, king of Prussia, and turns out he was into Greek philosophy, Roman philosophy. He renamed one of his palaces Remusburg. The actual name of the palace was Rheinsburg. He renamed it Remusburg. And why did he rename it Remusburg? Because Remus, Romulus, and Remus are the mythical, legendary. They had this fraternal fratricide. They fought, and Romulus killed Remus, right? And that's why Rome is named after Romulus. Remus died, so it's like Frederick the Great's shout out to the killed brother. He's going to name his palace after that one, Remusburg. And it was named and it was a small group of his friends, 11 friends. That's what they called it. And they had Roman nicknames, and they got together and they discussed Greek and Roman philosophy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, and plus, I have a student today from Australia, one of my meditation students from Australia, just got back. He went a month ago to Germany for Europe, and he went to Frederick the Great, Frederick II's palace. And he told me that in nowhere in any of the books that I've read or online researched did they tell me what he told me that he saw there. There's not just one statue of Marcus Aurelius at Frederick's palace. He has many, many statues of Marcus Aurelius throughout the grounds and in the palace.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That really blows your mind, doesn't it? That is very strange.
1,600 years apart, right?
That is very strange.
Right? So some memories continuing, right?
I guess they do, big time.
Yeah.
So all I could say is Marcus, and then the Kaiser, or whatever his name was, and
Frederick, yeah.
These things do carry on.
Yeah.
That is quite amazing.
Interestingly, I found out fairly recently that one of Frederick the Great's, one of the things he's known for is being a very pragmatic, practical. So this is a trait, personality trait, back to the threads that you talked about earlier. This is a personality trait that's run through all my lifetimes. Is I'm very pragmatic, very practical. To the point of being somewhat a utilitarian at certain points. And one of the things that he's known for is drilling his troops, and because Prussia in the mid-1700s became the powerhouse nation in Europe, defeating England, Russia, Austria, the French, et cetera, and one of the main reasons was Frederick drilled his troops more than any of the other countries. So maneuvering your troops during a battle back in the 18th century is really an important thing. So you got to get the troops to do it, because in the middle of the battle, you got cannonballs exploding all over the place. A lot of them lose focus. Talk about the ability to be able to focus in your waking state activity after you meditate, right? Really an important trait, right? In battle.
I would think so.
I think so. You got things exploding around. And so all the training that the French and the Russians and the Germans and the Austrians and the English, put their troops through, it would all go out the window. They weren't really trained enough to withstand those types of things. So Frederick would recreate things and so that this is what a lot of coaches do now in sports. They kind of recreate situations where you're gonna run into this problem. Let's create the problem now and practice through it, right?
Yes, of course.
So not that Frederick would blow cannonballs up around people, but he drilled them really, really well. That's one thing that he's known for, and one of the reasons why the historians think that he defeated all these other countries' armies so easily. The other thing was laziness. He was not lazy. Like, what would happen after a battle, even his own troops would sometimes think that they lost the battle, and he would, and then the winning team, country's team would, or troops would leave the field, the battlefield, and Frederick would go, "Well, no, we haven't lost till we've lost." So now that they're all, they're all tending to their wounded and they're cooking their meals and all that, we'll circle around and we wipe them out. And so we do that frequently. It's like, to me,
dirty pool a little bit.
Well, I think it's like, it's just, to me, it's like smart. It's like, okay, the battle has not been lost until it's lost. Okay. Now, and then the other thing is, it was all muskets, right? So you have this thing called a ramrod. You have to push the ball there with the wad and all this stuff. Okay. Well, what are all ramrods made of up until Frederick changed them? Wood. They're made of wood. And why were they made of wood? Because it's easy to make. And your uncle, who's a carpenter, who's not even a soldier, can make a ramrod for you and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So they're easy and quick to make. What happens to wood in battle? Especially when
they catch fire. It catches fire.
Catches fire, or it breaks. First,
it's going
to break because the soldiers are nervous and they're like, I got to get this, and because this guy's shooting me.
Yeah.
And they ram it in and they break it. And then what do they got now? They don't have a rifle anymore. If they're lucky, they had a bayonet. Now they have a big long, spear. That's it, right? And so what's Frederick known to have done? Create metal ramrods.
Oh, pretty basic. Yeah.
Basic. So they're straight, they're not going to warp, and they're not going to break. So, pretty
smart guy. He was pretty smart.
So then one of his senior officers came to the United States. Ben Franklin met him in Europe. And one of Frederick's senior officers, this is when Frederick was, in his late 60s, early 70s. So now he's kind of in the end of his life. He's not doing the whole battlefield thing. He's more administratively managing the country, because the country is now, at the top of the heap in Europe. So one of his senior officers meets Ben Franklin and goes to the United States and is hired by the Continental Army to train George Washington's troops.
Wow. So it all comes together here. Look at that.
Yeah. So George Washington's troops were such a motley, undisciplined group that Frederick's senior officer came and said, "Oh, first of all, you know what? The latrines should not be next to the kitchens. All right? So we're going to move the latrines." All of a sudden, people were not getting so sick so often. And then he drew
basic. Oh, Kelvin, we are out of time, and I want to go and talk with you about this for days. This is fascinating.
Yeah.
This is what do you want people to remember from this? Because this is so fascinating.
The main thing is looking at oneself and what does this stuff tell me about myself? That's what I want people to remember. Is you start remembering stuff, what does it tell you about yourself? And so this has increased my knowledge about myself, and especially the Carthaginian slave experience has allowed me to push through some very, very difficult times in this 20th century, 21st century lifetime as Kelvin Chin, when I've gotten laid off 5 times. So why? Because I knew my mind was so powerful. My mind willed myself to stay alive when I was on that wreckage in the Mediterranean 2,300 years ago. That's what I want people to remember, is how do these things teach ourselves? How do these experiences, what can they teach ourselves about ourselves and about the strengths and the weaknesses that we may need to work on in ourselves to make ourselves stronger, live a more content, more inwardly peaceful life as we continue through eternity.
Wow, that's beautifully said. What can we learn from what we see in these experiences, what we feel in these experiences, to help us grow and learn and be stronger in the lifetime we're living now? Beautifully said. Wow. We're going to have to do this again because you are such a great storyteller. I get so absorbed in in what we were saying. I totally lost all track of time. I could have listened to you all day. But as I recall, you've always been like that. Whatever we're talking about, you could just talk for days.
Yeah. They say that it's been a trait that I've had for many thousands of years. Yeah.
I'm sure that's true.
A lot of practice.
We have to do this again. Oh, well, meanwhile, everybody, this has been Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. Big hug, by the way, my dear. So good to see you.
See you.
This has been Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. I'm so happy you could be with us today and enjoy this. Please never forget that you are a powerful, eternal being. You never began, you never will end. And when you really get what that means and all its implications, it changes everything in your life for the better. Next week, and this is actually a great juxtaposition, our guest will be Peter Wright, and he'll have been here. Actually, this is the 17th time. Peter is such a frequent guest because he's a great favorite with Seek Reality listeners. He is, as you know, he's a past life regression therapist, and his work in this field is able to address a variable, huge range of mental and psychological problems. Peter, I've actually worked with him. He does an amazing job in helping people find and address issues, some of them very long-standing in their lives. And next week, we're going to be looking with Peter at some of the many kinds of problems that past life regression therapy has addressed in the lives of the people he's helped. And he's going to show us in his files some of the things that have really made a difference in those people's lives. Of course, he's going to mask the identities of the people that he's helped, but it really makes he can address in one session problems people have had for sometimes decades that talk therapy has not addressed at all. So be with us next week. You're going to love Peter Wright. If you've not, and you're going to get to see him, and maybe you've never seen him before, you'll get to see him next week. So please be with us. And this week, our guest has been Kelvin Chin. I've known Kelvin for years, and I've always found him to be so delightful and so entertaining, but also he is rock solid. He's very well educated, and this is all real. What he's talking to us about is real. I can vouch for him personally. And his latest book is called After the Afterlife. And as you see, he's also very into what we can learn from our own past lives. He has recovered memories of extensive past life experiences that go back for 6,000 years. I didn't know this about him, but I think we've got to have him back. I want to talk more about this whole thing and what he's been through and what he's learned from it. Today, I talked, there were areas I didn't want him to touch on, and he didn't. He was a very good sport about it all. And I'd like to have him back and delve a bit more into all of this. And I found, even though I didn't get to read much of his book because of the fact that I'd just broken my shoulder, we'll have him back again. I'll have read the book, and we'll talk about all of this a bit more. I'll be really frank with you. Reality is not just a lot more complex and amazing than we've been ever imagining. It's a lot more complex and amazing than we even can imagine. So we're going to we'll be talking with Kelvin again, but isn't he fun and isn't he entertaining? He's always like that. And now, of course, it's also time to once again mention that Seek Reality Online is your one-stop resource for all things afterlife. Just go to seekreality.com and start to learn for yourself that your own reality truly is eternal. Learn the ultimate truth from Craig Hogan, who is your worldwide expert on all things afterlife. And teachingsbyjesus.com is your single resource for all the beautiful divine truths that are brought to us in perfect love by the greatest teacher, Master Jesus, the eternally risen Christ. Now it really is Jesus's turn. We're just getting that website going. We're still getting direction. But as Christianity, the religion that was created by the Roman Emperor Constantine and not by Jesus, not at all. But as that religion finally dies, the genuine teachings of Jesus can finally come alive. Teachingsbyjesus.com is the Lord's own entirely religion-free website. It's made by Jesus in perfect love for you. My own nonfiction books are Liberating Jesus, My Thomas, The Fun of Dying, The Fun of Staying in Touch, The Fun of Growing Forever, The Fun of Living Together, and The Fun of Loving Jesus, Embracing the Christianity that Jesus taught. For young children, there's The Fun of Meeting Jesus, and you can order all these books through bookstores or on Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com. And most adult books are also available as audiobooks, except the last one. You have to do that one too. If you want to talk about anything at all, just contact me through the green contact block on robertagrimes.com. I answer every email, but I can only answer your email if you give me your correct email address. And sometimes they bounce because people haven't done that. They've left something out. So that makes me sad, especially if I spend a lot of time on a good email to back to you. So please be sure to give me your correct address. All of the more than 500 past episodes of Seek Reality audio are available on just about everywhere that you can find past episodes of audio podcasts. And now, if you have the Seek Reality app, you can always get the new audio episodes. And they're now our video episodes. Every week we add a new one. You can find them on Roku or on Fire Stick. And meanwhile, this has been Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. Please enjoy and make the most of this coming week in our one reality. There's just one, even though they try to tell you it's material. It's not material at all. None of it is. This is just all a big illusion. Please know that you are a powerful, eternal being, and you, most of all, in this entire universe, you are infinitely loved.